James Harden was terrific yesterday, and I'll just be honest with you guys. Like, I've been more open to the idea of a reunion than Blankers has. Look, you led the league in assists. The Rockets could very much need kind of a point guard. I don't really view Harden as a point guard, even though he led the league in assists. But he can be that lead guard. Got a couple of guards around him. Who knows where you end up in the lottery. You got Jabari here. I'm open to the idea of a reunion. And I'll be honest, the way he played yesterday and the way that he's played actually the entire playoffs, with the exception of a couple of games, overall he's been good.
Games 2 and 3, statistically, the worst 2 games back-to-back in his career in the playoffs.
Okay, what if Harden played poorly in Game 1, Game 4, they're swept?
Okay, so essentially he and AD are the same player, right? Every other game you're going to get something from him?
Cool, I'd be happy with either one.
What's your end game then with the Rockets?
So this is why I'm open to the idea of it, probably more than you, and maybe even more than some. Now, I'll preface it by saying I don't want it to be a long-term contract.
That's what I was going to say.
Like
everything matters.
Like a 2-year deal would be great. He did this little 1-and-1 deal with Philadelphia. Like, I'd be cool with that as well. I don't really care about the amount of money. I care more about the length of the contract, especially with, the way the payroll currently is, where you have a lot of rookie deals and young players anyways. The goal is that you're back to being a playoff team next year. The goal is that you're exciting again. The goal is that you can take the Rockets team under first year of Ime Udoka, and you could be potentially one of the top 10 teams in the West and playing actual high-stake basketball games again, while also not ruining the long-term gain of this young core. That's why I hesitate with the long-term contract. I don't want it to be like 3 years or more, because now I think that you have to make a decision about Harden at an older age versus one of these young stars that you have. I think that you can time the length of the contract right with when you're going to play these young players to where you're adding James Harden, an all-star level basketball player, the leader and assist in the NBA, without costing you anybody around it. And then the timing of the contract when it comes off the books, you just pay the young guys that you have. So you're just spending money. You're not losing draft capital. You're not losing young players. You're just using the money that you have under the salary cap.
I just think that you are... You're trying to speed up the process of making the playoffs in the short term while screwing up your long-term future, not financially, but just in the growth of your players. You've already gone through a really, really horrendous era of Rockets basketball in terms of not developing the young players that you've been able to put together. And now, as you get out of that and kind of wipe your shoe off from what you stepped into the Udoka era, I agree with you that, because I put term on here as a problem and money. But if it's only for 2 years, not that I think that he's going to take that or that Daryl's going to let him go.
He did the 1-and-1 in Philly.
Right, because he stayed in Philly. And I think that he knew that in a year's time, because they needed the money this last year, that in going forward, there was a wink-wink with Daryl that there's probably going to be max money on the table for him. But I think as it relates to the Rockets, now that you got out of stepping in that pile for the couple of years with Silas not developing the young players, now you're going to take a guy that from the day he walks into your locker room again, it's going to be seeming like old times. I'm the man. It's my ball. I'll share it when I feel like it. I don't think he's at a stage in his career ability-wise to carry this team and lead this team every single night.
He's never shot less in his life.
I understand that he's also playing with the MVP.
True.
And he's got Maxey and Tobias Harris, not a max player, but a good player. He's got good players around him. I think that when he gets here, he's just going to basically see that I'm the adult in the room, so you guys just sit back and do what I say and don't worry about what I do. And I think that, again, you're going to set back all these young players that are trying to find their way, find a role. Some of them are trying to find out if they can be superstars or not, and so is the Rockets organization. And I don't know that you're truly going to get the analysis you need out of the players that you have while basically maybe making the top 10.
Would it be worse, though? Like last year with Silas and KPJ as your point guard, would it be worse with Udoka and James Harden as your point guard? I don't think it's worse. I think it's better.
No, but I'm saying, again, the other thing that I said was, what's your goal? If your goal is just to make the playoffs, I think they can make the playoffs with the scenario you just painted. But I think that at what price? Because I think especially if you get Wembanyama.
I don't think it stunts your long-term growth though.
I do.
I think that you can do Harden short-term, get back to like playoff basketball in the short term, in the micro, but then in the macro you add I don't want to say you're going to add Victor because there's like an 84% chance you don't add Victor, but I don't think that it necessarily stunts the growth of the Rockets.
I think it hurts more if it's Victor because now now because Victor really can't spread his wings or really do as much as you want to see him do.
Why?
Because James is going to hog the ball.
But he's not doing it this year with, like you said, the MVP.
Scenario.
So if you have one of the best young players in basketball and a coach that's going to demand him to not be selfish with the ball, why would it stunt his growth? Because
I think that Tillman's going to probably tell Ime Udoka, if we get Harden, give him the ball, no matter what.
That's a problem.
And I think that could be a very big factor in this. But I also think that with a room of adults and a playoff coach and Doc Rivers and an organization that, he's being watched and scrutinized as being a guy that had to change his role, and that's constantly been a discussion with him. He's going to come back to a place where I'm the man, I've been the man here, I'm going to be the man again. And I think that when you are evaluating Jalen Green to see if you're going to give him a max contract and where he's going to be, when you're still trying to figure out what Jabari's going to be and if KPJ fits and what he's going to do, and whoever you get with your draft pick.
Right, but how does that stunt their growth more next year than it did this past year?
I'm not talking about next year. I said you could get something to make the playoffs with James for next year.
Right.
But I think while you're doing that, you're not developing and getting you're not seeing what you need to see out of these young players.
Right, but what I said was the pushback of that. Like, Harden as a point guard, Udoka as the head coach, I think develops the young players more than Steven Silas as the head coach and Kevin Porter Jr. as the point guard.
But it's a different discussion. Fine, it's going to be better than having Silas and KPJ, but overall, does that make Jalen Green better? Does that make Jabari better? Does that make Şengün better? Do they see the ball as much? No. Will they get the looks in the same place? Absolutely not. Probably for the most part, it's going to be James deciding when he gets stuck to give it up. And I think that's where you're stunting these guys. Not to mention that they're going to, from an Udoka standpoint, I think where they will develop is he's going to expect everybody to play defense. But that's where James is probably going to have a problem because he doesn't play defense.
And he's a little bit of a liability defensively, too. Like, they were kind of attacking him in some matchups.
They were definitely trying to run, like a Steph Curry, they were trying to run switches to get Harden on their guys.
Yeah, see, your point is more Udoka and point guard, who knows, versus Udoka and James Harden as your point guard, and you like option A more than option B for the development of the young players. But what if the backup plan, and like if you get Scoot Henderson, I think you eliminate the idea of James Harden altogether. But if the option is, would you rather have scenario A? I mean, Udoka's your head coach, that's fixed.
Yep.
But who would you rather your point guard be next season? Kevin Porter Jr. or James Harden?
So I hate your questions.
But I think that's the most realistic question.
Because
honestly, if you don't get Scoot Henderson in the draft, I think the most likely scenario of who your point guard is next year are those two players.
Well, but because Udoka's your head coach and you're not paying $50 million to get James Harden, I think you're in a better situation because KPJ is not going to be able to KPJ under Udoka because he's going to be held accountable because he's going to have to make the right decisions, not lead the league in turnovers, or Udoka's going to put someone else at point guard. Ideally, I think we're both in the same boat that if you get Scoot Henderson, I think he's a really, really good fit for this team.
I would throw out this entire conversation if you get Scoot.
No question. But I think that if those are my only two choices, I'll take KPJ under Udoka.
Wow. Okay.
More than I'll take James Harden with the money and the headache that he's going to bring when he wants to be the James he's always been in Houston.
I go with the Harden side of that. What do you say, Houston? 713-780-ESPN. You can have point guard Kevin Porter Jr. You can have point guard James Harden. 713-780-3776. Zach says every time I start to think maybe Branham isn't so bad, he says something to tick me off. Nobody wants Harden. I'm right there with you, Zach. I hate James Harden, but I am slightly intrigued by the idea. I think you're a top 10 team in the West if you had James Harden.